Okay, so how did you go about hacking into the computers to find what you were looking for?
Well, unlike the press would have you believe, it wasn't very clever. I searched for blank passwords. I wrote a tiny Perl script, the Perl language, that tied together other people's programs that searched for blank passwords, so you could scan 65,000 machines in just over 8 minutes.
So you went and actually accessed 65,000 machines sitting on, I guess, 65,000 desks in different buildings?
No, because all 65,000 aren't necessarily live yet. You might find typically 5,000 might be live, and out of that 500 might be Windows machines, then 50 might have blank administrator passwords, which is a pretty bad ratio for the world's largest military.
So you're saying that you found computers which had a high-ranking status, administrator status,
yep,
which hadn't had their passwords set, they were still set to default?
Yeah, precisely. And in some cases it was thousands of machines, because they had an image. Rather than install Windows off a CD at every machine, you blast it onto an image, stick the image in all the machines, and every single machine has a blank local administrator password. So.
And you actually eventually took control of one particular machine on a desk somewhere in NASA, is that right?
Well, I mean, I had control of every machine that had a blank administrator password, because the door was open.
What did you find inside NASA?
One of these people was a NASA photographic expert, and she said that in Building 8 at Johnson Space Center, they regularly airbrushed out images of UFOs from the high-res satellite imagery.
We were a contractor, but most of the time I worked on site, excuse me, in Building 8. I had the opportunity to do extra work during downtime, which was between missions, and I walked into a photo lab, which was the NASA lab across the hallway. I had a secret clearance, which is not that high, but I was able to go into restricted areas, which this was. At the time, I was talking to one of the techs in there, and he drew my attention to a photograph, a NASA photograph. It had a dot on it, and I said, "What is that?" Well, he drew my attention to it, and I said, "Is that a dot on the emulsion?" And he said, and he's smiling, and he has his hands crossed, and he said, "Round dots on the emulsion don't leave round shadows on the ground." And this was an aerial photograph of the Earth, I'm assuming the Earth, because it had pine trees on it, and the shadows of the craft, or whatever it was, were in the same angle as the trees. And by its very nature, UFO, and I wanted to clarify that to a gentleman that was talking to me, means unidentified. So I did not know what this was. But I realized at this point that it's very secret, that it was kept secret, because I asked him, "What are you going to do with this piece of information?" And he said, "We always airbrush these out before we sell them to the public." So they're pesky little creatures appearing on this photograph they wanted to get rid of. After that, I decided I would ask questions to other people that work there. And I found that I had to ask them away from the site and not on site.
And using the same blank password hunting technique, I got down to Building 8, got a few blank passwording machines there, and what she said was there. There was folders called filtered and unfiltered, or processed and raw, something like that. I got one picture out of the folder, bearing in mind this is a 56K dial-up.
So a very slow internet connection.
Oh crikey, yeah, I mean, yeah, dial-up days. A 235 megabyte picture, and if you're talking 5 minutes a megabyte, obviously impossible to download. Also in a NASA proprietary image format, not a GIF or a JPEG or anything. So using the remote control program, I turned the color down to 4-bit color, the screen resolution really, really low, and even then this picture was still, juddering and coming onto the screen. But what came onto the screen was amazing. It was a culmination of all my efforts. It was a picture of something that definitely wasn't man-made. It was above the Earth's hemisphere. It was kind of looked like a satellite. It was cigar-shaped. It had geodesic domes above, below, to the left, to the right, and both ends of. And although it was a low-resolution picture, it was very close up. This thing was hanging in space. The Earth's hemisphere was visible below it. And no rivets, no seams, none of the stuff associated with normal man-made manufacturing.
Is it possible this is an artist's impression?
I don't know. No, for me it was more than coincidence. I mean, this woman had said, this is what happens in this building and this space center. I went into that building, that space center, and saw exactly that. And the folders were even called unprocessed and processed, or raw and filtered or something. So,
do you have a copy of this? It came down to your machine,
No, it came, the graphical remote viewer works frame by frame. It's a Java application, so it's nothing saved on your hard drive, or at least if it is, only one frame at a time might be.
So did you get the one frame?
Nope.
What happened?
Well, once I was cut off and my picture disappeared, I was
You were
extremely
actually
pissed
cut off?
Oh yeah.
Time you were downloading the picture?
Yeah, I saw the guy's hands move across. And bear in mind, you're not downloading it, you're viewing it remotely, so in a way it is downloading because the picture's coming from there to yours, but you're not downloading it as a named file to your hard drive, you're viewing it through an application.
I mean, if I was to go and look for pictures that you've described, I'd make blooming sure that I could record everything that happened on my machine.
Yeah.
Is there a way to do that?
I think there probably was a screenshot function in Remotely Anywhere, which I didn't use, and I'm sitting there bedazzled, thinking, crikey, this really is looking weirder and weirder the more that comes of it. And also I thought that I was safe there. I didn't think I'd be caught, 3/4 of the way through of looking at the first picture I'd looked at. And also I was amazed that it was how she said it would be.
So you were cut off while you were looking at this picture. A few months later, you were caught. What happened on that day?
National High-Tech Crime Unit knocks on your door early in the morning. I'd been asleep for about an hour, I think. So I was very groggy.
You weren't up all night hacking, were you?
I was, yes. But fortunately for me, they'd been monitoring me for 3 months beforehand and saw that I wasn't doing damage, that I was snooping around. So it was good in a way. Yeah, that was March 2002, and they said, oh, you might get 6 months or so community service. Next thing I know, November 2002, 6 months has turned into 60 years in an American jail.
Why do they think that sentence is suitable for you?
They've written some new cybercrime laws, and when I was following my case and following the changes in legislation, and even the minute changes made to the legislation, I'm sure my case heavily affected the new cybercrime laws in America. I think they're peeing their pants. They're incredibly scared that their computer systems are so easy to get into. And so rather than stop the bad practice and increase the security or employ proper IT people instead of training up military personnel, they're trying to scare everyone away from not doing it. So I'm the anti-hacking poster boy,
That's why you think they're trying to impose such a serious sentence. Why are they saying they're imposing such a serious sentence?
They say I've damaged every machine I was on.
Is that possible?
Well, I mean, yeah, you could have done, but it wouldn't have been in my interest. I wanted to maintain a quiet presence. Also, they say that for it to be an extraditable offence, it has to be worth a year in prison. For it to be worth a year in prison, it has to be $5,000 worth of damage. And as if by magic, lo and behold, every machine I'm on is $5,000 worth of damage.
$5,000 worth of damage to each machine?
Yeah.
Is that possible? How much were those machines worth, do you think?
Well, crikey, I mean, in America, PCs are even cheaper than they are over here. I'm sure they probably cost about $500.
You acknowledge that what you did was against the law. It was wrong, don't you?
Unauthorised access is against the law, and it is wrong.
What do you think is a suitable punishment for someone that did what you did?
Well, firstly, because of what I was looking for, I think I was morally correct, even though I regret it now. I think a free energy technology should be publicly available. I want to be tried in my own country under the Computer Misuse Act, and I want evidence brought forward, or at least want the Americans to have to provide evidence in order to extradite me, because I know there is no evidence of damage. And that is the main brunt of the charges. That's what's gone from 6 months community service to 60 years in a foreign jail.
Do you understand maybe that someone who hacks into such a high